hard, ready to go, turned on, and know exactly what moves to do, how to decode this person in front of you who might not even understand themselves at all. And that's just your responsibility.
How do we have more and better sex?
Wow, Max, that's a great question. No foreplay. We're just going to jump right into that.
Dive in,
We're just going to jump into the sex?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, that has been the question that has been driving my career for 2 decades, almost 2 decades, Max. I started a podcast 18 years ago asking that question. How do we have better sex? How do we have great sex? What does great sex even mean? So what I did was I realized that I wanted to write it all down in one place because I've done thousands and thousands of podcasts and I've been talking about it and giving people tips. And what I realized is that after helping millions of people understand their sex life, their relationship, dating, love, that they cannot have great sex and pleasure without a strong foundation. And that foundation has to do with these 5 pillars of sexual intelligence or sex IQ that I just wrote about in my book that is being released this week.
Damn.
There are 5 pillars.
You heard it here first, folks. 5 pillars of sexual IQ.
Sex IQ that will help anybody really have the sex life that they want and understand why they're not having the sex life they want. So it's really pillars to understanding what have to come into place to have great sex. Because most people think it's sort of this magical thing they kind of throw, like, I hope it feels good. I'm going to close my eyes and go in here and bang around in the dark. Hope that works. And then when it doesn't work, they can't have orgasms. They can't get hard. They're no longer attracted to their partner. Their libido takes a nosedive. They don't know what to do about it either. So if you understand all the things that are contributing to you having great sex, you'll be able to troubleshoot for yourself.
Damn.
That's smart sex, baby.
I want to learn about these 5 pillars.
Okay.
But wait, before we get to that, because I know listeners and viewers are waiting on bated breath to get to these pillars.
Yeah.
Tell us about your background.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my background, how I got into sex, is that I was having sex and it wasn't that satisfying. I didn't have a lot of information about sex growing up. Come to find out, a lot of people didn't have a lot of great and accurate sex information, especially if you grew up in the States. Your sex education might have been like a day or 2 in school, and it was, don't get pregnant, don't get an STD, here's how the menstruation cycle works, you know what I mean? And like, here's some condoms, have a nice life. But there's nothing in there about pleasure and about connection, about intimacy and all the things. So there I was out in the world having sex, and it was good, or it'd be good for a while, like with a new partner, right? The honeymoon phase, amazing. The first 3 months to a year of being with somebody, and then it wasn't. So what I realized, like I thought that was just me too. I started faking pleasure, faking orgasms. I was just not, it was good, not great. And here's the other thing. I'm also an overachiever. And I thought, well, what if sex, like what does it mean to have amazing sex? Because I'm probably missing something here. So I started asking people questions. I started saying, like, what does great sex mean to you? How do you have wonderful sex? So that's and then literally 18 years ago, I decided to start a podcast asking people about their sex life and their relationships, because that is literally my history of feeling like I no longer want to be a fraud in bed. I want to learn to have more pleasure. I want it to last. Because I also thought, how do you have sex with one person for the rest of your life and keep it hot if that's like our goal? And should you even have sex with one person? Does monogamy even make sense? So all those questions I wanted answered, I threw myself into the whole sex world, made it my life's work, got a doctorate in human sexuality, and here we are today.
And here we are. So great.
Yeah.
I mean, reaching like the pinnacle of what it means to have good sex. Self-actualization from the vantage point of sex. Who else is talking? Nobody else is talking about that, really. Yeah, you're the one.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think people are talking about, I don't know, like tips and tricks, which I do. I mean, that's the thing also about my book, is that every single sex tip I've ever talked about is in this book, and it's broken down into like oral, anal, like masturbation, all the things. But I realize that a lot of you want quick tips and quick fixes, and there's people that could give you that, but this is a more holistic approach. People understand that it's emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical health. Everything goes into having great sex. That's what we're doing here, tying it all in.
Yeah. Where does good sex come from? Does it come from within? Is it about the chemistry between two partners? Like, Like, where does it originate?
It's a lot of things that contribute to it. So yes, connection's important, but also you have to be, so one of the second pillar is health. How's your physical and mental health? Having an orgasm is about blood flow and nerve endings and your brain being on board. So if you're not exercising, you're eating unhealthy foods, you have toxic thoughts, or you have people around you that aren't healthy, you have an unhealed trauma, your sex isn't going to be that as great as it can be. If you are not great at communicating, that's another one of the pillars. If you're not great at communicating about sex and asking for what you want in the bedroom and knowing what you want in the bedroom, your sex life's going to take a hit. If you're not feeling great in your body, if you walk around all day being like, I hate my body, I don't like the way I look, God, I can't, my left boob's bigger than my right boob, or what is he going to notice I gained weight, or whatever your thing is, and then you get into the bedroom with somebody and you're naked and you're like, wonder why the sex wasn't great. It's because you were hating on yourself all day long.
Yeah.
So there's all of these factors. And I invite people to look at those factors and say like, okay, because great sex, the great news is that anyone can have fulfilling, satisfying sex. We just need to understand the building blocks to that.
So let's unpack these pillars. And let's start, I guess, like with communication, because one of my absolute favorite lines that I've ever learned from you is that communication is lubrication.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
That is, that's what I actually use that title in the book for the communication chapter, which I think is one of the best chapters in the book because, okay, so I just want everyone to feel okay here and know that if you've never talked about sex before to your partner, if you're not comfortable with it, that's okay. Because most people are not comfortable talking about sex because we don't hear many examples of it in our culture. Maybe we think that if we do have to talk about it, again, it's still this, I try to debunk all this notion that sex should magically be amazing all the time. It's not going to be. So yeah, we have to learn skill set, learning to talk about sex is a skill set. And I give a lot of different tools to that too, like different tips, because here's what I've also found out. When you ask somebody to have a conversation about sex, like let's say we've been dating, right, for 6 months. And I was like, okay, we need to talk about our sex life. And we've never talked about it. And I say that to you. You know what might happen, Max? You might, if you're like many who go into fight or flight, fear. You might be like, oh shit.
Close down.
Shut down. Because it wasn't like, Max, we need to talk about what we're doing on Saturday night. Or let's talk about where we're going to go on vacation. Or let's talk. It's sex. And so we go fear. We're like, what's wrong? Oh my God, I did something wrong. So because it feels just not normal.
There's a lot of ego.
A lot of ego and a lot of ego in it. And we're not used to it. So it's probably one of the most important pillars. The most important thing to understand is how to have these conversations in a mindful way that is like loving and open. And I teach people a lot about how to just be a great listener. We have active listening. And I give also a lot of tools for people to understand what they how to have the conversation. So there's something called like the compliment sandwich, which is a great thing to do if you want to talk about sex.
What is that? It sounds
the compliment
tasty.
It's okay. It is. You'd like the compliment. So here's what it is. And this is great for any awkward conversation, really about anything. But it's a great way to give feedback. So you might say something like this. So let's say I want to say to you, I love our sex life, Max. Here's how I would do it. Let's say I wanted to make out more. And I feel like our relationship's great, but we just don't make out as much. I'd be like, hey, babe. I'd start with something positive. The first piece of bread. Our sex life has been so hot lately, and I'm really loving the way we both can I get graphic here? I love how hot it was last night, the way you slowly undressed me. That was really, really hot. And I felt it all over my body. I've been thinking about that hot sex all day. Then the second layer, the meat, if you will, and I've been thinking a lot about making out. That is such a key part of my arousal and my desire. And so I think if we could kind of kiss more, then the last piece would be, I think it would be great for both of us, because then I would be even more turned on and be more available to give you even more pleasure in the bedroom and would take our sex life to the next level. So you always want to start with something very positive and affirming about your sex life. Give that little constructive feedback or give that suggestion, and then close it up with why it's good for both of you.
The compliment sandwich.
That's it, babe.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And there's a lot more that came from. There's a lot more tips about that, just because it's awkward and it's like, It's not like talking about anything else. And so people need to, I've just had to walk people through. A lot of what I do is I do give tips, but a lot of it is about communication at the end of the day.
Well, it's interesting because like I feel like with men there's a lot of ego. I don't know if that's necessarily the case for women. I think for women, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a woman, there's more it's more vulnerability. Whereas for men it's like men want to feel like they're
Everything.
Yeah,
And
like the king of the jungle.
I think, yeah. And the thing is why my heart bleeds for men and I feel so bad for men is because you guys have so much pressure. You have to make the first, okay, I'm not, again, we does not speak to every man and it's 2023 and we can all make the move. We can all be in charge of sex. But typically you have to make the move. Maybe you have to ask someone out. Maybe you have to pay for the date. And then you're supposed to be hard, ready to go, turned on, and know exactly what moves to do, how to decode this person in front of you who might not even understand themselves at all. And that's just your responsibility. Where women, I'm talking about in heterosexual relationships, but women are like, we're taught to be more passive, more receptive, more responsive. So yeah, it is ego. So if it's not going right, even though, by the way, men, you were not set up with the information and the accurate tools at all. So, and a lot of people grew up watching porn and they're like, and porn's not an accurate way to learn about sex. So anyway, yes, it is ego and it is just this pressure, but that doesn't have to be there if couples come together and say, we're going to collaborate together. Because in a relationship, you're both responsible for having great sex. It's not up to one person.
Yeah. And good sex is more than just like the climax, right? It's more than about the orgasm.
Way more than orgasm, for sure. In fact, orgasm is like the dessert, I guess. It's the icing on the cake, but there's so many other things that go into it.
Yeah. Foreplay, kissing, making out, massage, sex toys, playing, flirting and escalation, playtime. I mean, orgasm is fantastic, and I have a whole chapter on that as well about every single kind of orgasm on the planet and how to maximize your chance for having more orgasms. But at the end of the day, sex is there's just so many other things. You can have all the orgasms in the world and still be having like really disappointing sex. Have you quantified like how many different kinds of orgasms there are?
It depends who you ask, but there's dozens of different kinds of orgasms.
What are some of them that might be like?
Okay, so there's so men have a few. Men have the penile orgasm, right? You have an orgasm with your penis. There's also a prostate orgasm. Men have a prostate, women do not, but it's through your anus.
Through the butt?
Through the butt.
Damn.
Through the butt.
I wish there was a more convenient way to
say the word. To get there?
Yeah.
That's about it. But why? It's fun.
It's an inconvenient truth.
It is inconvenient, but not if you learn how to do it in a way that makes it more accessible, exciting, and fun.
Interesting.
I think it's a shame that a lot of men feel shameful around it and think that it's just sort of for exiting or it's dirty or it means something about their sexuality, because it's an amazing pleasure source. It's like the G-spot for men.
Do you find a lot of heterosexual men into that?
They are now.
Interesting.
After I get my hands on them, not physically, not personally, but sometimes. No, what's interesting in all these years, you've been doing this a long time too, talking about health and wellness. It's interesting to look at trends and how things change, and some things stay the same. Like I get the same questions a lot, but what's been awesome is that. So for years, I kept telling people like, "Oh, man, you guys, you should try it out." And guys were like, "Well, that makes me gay," or "I shouldn't have to do that," or "That's just wrong." But lately, in the last few years, I think because maybe there's been some great television about this. I think Broad City and a few top shows talked about this. But I think that straight men are a little bit more open to exploring right now. There's toys. There's, I guess you could use fingers. There's toys. There's just ways to explore and play. And most guys who get over the shame around are like, holy shit, that's literally the best orgasm I've ever had.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So that's,
good to know.
Good to know. You can look more about that in the book. So that's that for men. Then for women, there's the clitoral orgasm. Which is the clitoris, which is kind of the most popular orgasm. That gets the Academy Award of all orgasms. That's the one that's a little bit easier to achieve for many women because it's external, although the clitoris also goes deep inside. Here's the interesting thing about orgasms. It's also very understudied. Here's the thing about sexuality. What I found, even in writing this book, Max, for years, everyone, myself, in my field, including myself, we said this.
Well, the clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings. And it's not just that external bud that you see above the vaginal opening, but it has legs that extend deep inside. And that's always amazing people too, that it's internal.
Yeah, it looks like a wishbone.
It's a wishbone, exactly. But what we found out in the middle of writing this book is that the clitoris has 12,000 nerve endings.
Damn.
Because they just started studying it more. It was just not something that was prioritized in health and wellness and sexuality. People weren't like, let's fun to studying the clitoris.
Imagine that an aspect of women's health would be ignored.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's pretty exciting to find out that, wow, there's all these ways. And then so to come to find out that these nerve endings, a lot of them are inside. So through that, you can have a cervical orgasm. You can have a blended orgasm, which is a combination of maybe a internal orgasm and an external internal orgasm is also known as the G spot. I call it a G area.
Wait, what the hell is a cervical orgasm?
It's like where your cervix is. If you have applied pressure into that area for many women, the cervix, you can have an orgasm that way.
I've only heard from my female friends that it's like uncomfortable to have that part of the anatomy stimulated. If you hear like women that are with like uncomfortably large dudes,
yes, exactly. And it's not for everybody, but there's different practices to. There's like the A spot too. It's the anterior fornix, which is the upper part of the vaginal opening above, towards your front belly button. It's like I have diagrams.
Is that the G spot?
That's the anterior fornix. That's the A spot. There's the A spot. So there's a lot of different kinds of orgasms. But here's what I want people to know, because I also feel like people get overwhelmed by all the orgasms. They're like, I just want to have one. Like, I just want to have an orgasm in a sexual situation, and I don't want more pressure to have different kinds. So yes, to answer your question, it can be really painful, but there's also a lot of reasons why. It's like about embodiment and understanding your own body and how to like have an orgasm the right way at the right time with enough lubricant and enough arousal. But the blended orgasm thing is interesting too, because getting back to that is that we're more likely to have more orgasms once we have one orgasm, like a clitoral orgasm, which again is the most accessible one, because then it sort of primes the pump, if you will. It allows all this blood flow and the whole area becomes more engorged. So your vulva, internal blood flow starts to move, and then it stimulates the internal nerve endings, where then if you stimulate those areas, you'll have more orgasms.
Fascinating.
Yeah. It's fascinating. The science of orgasm is fascinating.
I learned recently there's like a pretty massive orgasm gap, like something like 65% of women in heterosexual relationships do orgasm. The remainder do not. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's huge. The orgasm gap is it's kind of why I wake up every day. I think that's part of me is trying to close that gap. So the orgasm gap refers to two things. And that is, number one, that in 99% of sexual situations with a man and a woman, the man is like 95, 98% more likely to orgasm, and a woman's like 65% going to orgasm. That's one thing. So that's just a disparity of pleasure there. Like, that's just ridiculous that happens. And then that's why I think women fake it or just think it's not important or want to get it over with. But during penetration too, during penetrative sex, that's where the numbers really drop, is that men are more likely to orgasm. And for women, it's only 30% more orgasm during penetration. So the other part of it is that we need to understand how to, we need more clitoral stimulation, or we need fingers or mouth or toys. And so that's really the two parts of it, that men are just more likely to overall. And then during penetration, we're just not going to orgasm either. But you can close the gap. I mean, there's a lot of different things to do. She comes first, or you work on her pleasure, or you get some toys. There's ways to speed it up. I think that people just think it's like this mystery. And I think a lot of great sex and great pleasure, we sort of have chalked up to like this mysterious, like I said, like I started out with, I hope it works, but we need to sort of hack, for better words, like our own sexuality. And that's what I try to get people to do. Like, here's what all the things that need to happen to come into play for you to have an orgasm. Like, I think I can say this. I can probably help anybody have an orgasm. I'm pretty proud about that. But it's a case-by-case basis. So that's why if people came to me, like 5 women came to me, which often happens, and that's what's kind of the driving force behind this why I was like, I got to write this book, is because I can help them, but it takes a series of questions, and there's 5 different answers. Like, there's different paths, right? Just like getting healthy. Mm-hmm. Same thing. Someone comes to you like, I want to lose weight. There's a combination of things that they would need to do to get there. But with sex, which is kind of known now, right? You got to exercise, you got to eat right, you got to take some supplements maybe.
It's like a method, yeah.
Method.
But with sex, there hasn't been a method as much, I think, until now. So I try to like have people know that it's so. First of all, I want people to know that they're okay, like where you're at. Start today, and then let's figure out ways to get you to where you want to be.
What have you learned about the role that like physical health plays in sex and orgasm?
It's huge. In fact, I would say that your physical health is probably one of the most important factors that it could contribute to your ability to have an orgasm. It's definitely one of the 5 pillars for sure. And I'd say one of the leading pillars, meaning, okay, so if orgasm and pleasure and all that is about blood flow, are you moving your body? Are you exercising? Are you lifting weights? Are you doing all the things that you talk about, Max? Like literally, if you follow what Max says, and I do, Max, I love your Instagram more than almost any. I hope everyone follows you on Instagram. It's so freaking good.
You're so sweet.
I learned so much. I probably have more of your posts saved than anybody.
I love it.
I do. I love it. So it's all those things. So if people are moving their body, they're eating healthy, they're eating foods that make them feel good, not the foods that make them feel bad. They're gonna be more likely to be able to get aroused when they want to, have orgasms when they want to, have more pleasure, move their bodies, feel better in their bodies. I mean, just the act of exercising gives us more confidence to be naked with somebody else.
It boosts blood flow.
Exactly. It's all about the blood flow.
Yeah.
So why we're not having orgasms and why, I mean, there's also testosterone, getting our hormones checked, right?
Yeah.
I mean, testosterone is important for all genders, but there's just, so I think it's hormones. It's really hormones, blood flow, exercise, moving your body, the foods that you eat.
Yeah.
All of that.
Listening to your body, making sure that you're eating foods that agree with you.
Exactly.
Because I can't imagine if people are eating junk foods all day that are leaving them bloated and gassy, that they're going to feel like sexy at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. Not at all. And so those are things to look at when people are like, oh, why aren't I having the sex that I want? Or, I've had a lot of people call me up. They're like, I do everything. I remember there was a guy who called in once and he was like, I'm doing everything that I can. And I don't know why I'm not having pleasure. My partner's having pleasure. And a woman called in about her husband and she's like, I don't know what it is. And he's tried all the things. And we kind of broke it down. Like his diet was horrendous. Like he was having beers every night, drinking like just greasy foods and steak and not moving his body because she like literally couldn't crack the code. Because again, this might seem obvious to us right now and talk about it, but a lot of people don't make the connection between the medications that they're taking or not taking. The foods they're eating and all those things. If it is about blood flow, meaning that's how you're going to get erect and how you're going to have orgasms and you're doing all these things to impede your blood flow, you're not going to be having the pleasure you need.
Are there any natural, because I mean, you've been steeped in this topic for such a long time, natural sex, enhancement, either foods or supplements, and because we've all been in like the bathroom, men I think in particular, where there's like those vending machines where you can buy those, essentially what are dick pills?
Yeah, exactly.
But is there anything like that really works?
I mean, I think like temporarily. I mean, there are some stuff like horny goat weed is a supplement that can work for some men for temporarily for like blood flow and stuff. But I don't want to recommend any of this stuff because it's not FDA approved. And even stuff like Viagra, which could work temporarily, isn't great for a long-term basis, I think personally, although people are going to do it. I think like anything, you could supplement with like more maca. You could put like a scoop of maca in your smoothie and things like that. But I think overall, there is not one thing that it's a combination of a lot of different things that you would be doing anyway. Listen, if it's going to affect your gut, it's going to in your brain. And, there's just a big, right, the gut brain connection, the gut everything connection. It's like your sex life as well. So I don't think that there's like a special magic pill, unfortunately, that's going to help.
I agree with that. People love to reach for those like quick fixes.
They do.
While completely ignoring the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, exactly.
The basics, right?
The basics are important. I'm not going to say, and people have tried, like, please sell this supplement for me. And I just am, some supplements are great for overall, but there's not one that I'm going to say, like, you're going to take this and you're going to be a sex goddess and you're going to have, your penis is going to be hard all the time. Like I've yet to see it existing.
I mean, what's funny is that and I don't know how this relates to like sex. I don't know if these studies have been done, but there are definitely like some nitric oxide boosting supplements that have been used for a long time, like in the fitness industry. There's like beetroot powder.
Yes, I've heard about that stuff too.
Citrulline, like it would stand to reason that they might potentially have like a synergistic effect.
Okay, yes, absolutely. And I have taken some of those. So personally, I'm not as consistent with them, but I think that perhaps if you are consistent with some of those things, that maybe they could have some really positive benefits. But it's not going to do anything for you if you haven't healed your trauma, if you haven't masturbated without shame, if you haven't communicated in the bedroom, right? So I think you can look into those things and you can definitely try them and be consistent. But I've yet to find one supplement or one thing that's going to happen if you've underlying like root things that are going on that you haven't quite dealt with.
Yeah.
So
Well said.
thanks, babe.
In your book, you talk about the pleasure thieves that impede joy. What's that all about?
So here's the thing. Pleasure is our birthright. Pleasure is actually productive. The more pleasure we have in our life, the more productive we're going to be, the more pleasure is presence. When we're doing something pleasurable, we have presence. There's so many reasons why pleasure is important. However, there are so many things in our lives that are stealing our pleasure. And I do call those the pleasure thieves. So we can be It's funny because I opened the book with that. Or it's the second chapter. I was like, I know y'all want the blowjob tips and the oral sex tips, and I'm going to get to those. But right now, here's what's keeping you from that. And the pleasure thieves essentially are stress, anxiety, stress. That's probably one of the biggest killers of our sex drive. People are so confused, like, I don't know why I don't want sex anymore. I'm not in the mood. It's like, well, how's your stress level? Oh my God, I'm so worried about my job and money and things. It's like, well, that's going to impact you. So stress is one of them. Trauma.
Doesn't sex also help dissipate stress?
Yes, it does. It does help. The more sex you have, the more connected sex you have. Even orgasms can temporarily help relieve stress.
Wow.
So it's stress, it's trauma, and it's shame. Shame, like having shame about our bodies, our sexual history. If we grew up in a home where sex was shameful, or you were told that if you have sex, you are going to be, before marriage, or you're going to just being sexual or desiring sex is undesirable or unhealthy or something that you shouldn't do, then even though you are an adult now and you're making a conscious choice, you might still have some residual shame. So I help people in the book, sort of identify those places in their life where it's still rearing their ugly head.
Damn.
Or where they're having shame over. It's like where they have sex and they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
A shame over.
Shame over.
Are there still states where certain types of sex are outlawed, or is that not a thing anymore?
It's still a thing.
It's still a thing?
It's still a thing. I think it's like Texas and other places, probably like Florida, where it's not enforced, but there was some butt sex, where it's illegal, and like gay sex, I think, and basically anal sex, I think, is still illegal. Vibrators are illegal in some states.
Illegal?
Illegal.
That's
You
insane.
get thrown in jail. Apparently, I haven't heard any cases where people are being thrown in jail for that, but it's insane. Well, so here's the thing.
The irony, you get thrown in jail. And
there's irony.
That's happening a lot in jail.
The irony is that you can't have anal sex. We're going to throw in jail where it'll be much more possible. Right, dude. Right.
Crazy.
So, but that's why I want people. I love that you asked that, because honestly, we're like, why are we so tripped about sex? 2023, you could buy a vibrator at Walgreens, and I'm cool with it. My parents, maybe even you're like, I'm talking to my parents about it now, or I don't know. Sex is more top of mind, but yet our roots, we are a puritanical, backwards society where we are so, in many ways, we see sex everywhere. Like people are dressing sexy and acting sexy, and you see them, I don't know, but yet the underlying roots of our culture is still like, be sexy, but not, especially if you're a woman, like be sexy, but not too sexy, or then you're slutty, or don't want sex too much, but want it just enough. Don't initiate, don't know too much about sex, but know just enough. There's just a lot of mixed messages. And I think that it's confusing. And so the fact that there's still in the books places where sex is, some sex acts that are completely commonplace are illegal or outlawed should show you that we haven't come that far.
Well, is there a, because like I think one of the costs of like the proliferation of porn on the internet is that we have like a generation of men who've become kind of, I guess, desensitized to the forms of sex that would have gotten them off in the past. And now it's like sex has become so extreme.
Right.
So maybe just by labeling sex as extreme, I'm putting a stigma on it. But I mean, you can go to like porn sites on the internet now, and like, if you can imagine it, there's porn of it. It's like really intense.
It's very, very intense.
You know?
And I think that, porn is, I like porn. I think that porn has its uses. I'm not like anti-porn. It's titillating. It can be really fun for couples. You can learn what you like. But the problem is that porn, the proliferation of porn without accurate sex education is a disaster. Because a lot of young kids who grew up with an iPad in their hand or a phone in their hand, they've been seeing porn since they were 8 years old. And since there's an absence of sex education, and then they're seeing porn, they're like, well, that must be sex. That's how sex happens. And I'm always telling people, like, there is no way that what's happening right now even feels good. Like, he's nowhere near her clitoris. That position doesn't feel good. Like, sex is scripted. I mean, porn is scripted. And I just want people to kind of understand that, especially, young people. But then there is an escalation of it too, that there's problems with porn when you keep watching it, right? And then you keep escalating what you're watching, right? Oh, that was really, I can't believe I watched that, but I watch it. Now I'm going to watch it, and that's something that's even more extreme that's going to make me feel really like worse, but I can't help it. I have to keep escalating to get that same arousal is when, porn can become problematic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say that I've never watched porn, okay? Because I'd be lying. But when I was like, coming up in the world as a young, hot-blooded 18-year-old, like porn to me was just like looking at it was like naked women, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like that was like
how wonderful. Right?
Yeah, how wonderful. But now it's like you go online and you can see like close-ups of like women's like cervixes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you really can.
Yeah.
Talk about the cervical orgasm, which might be helpful if that's what was happening, but right. No,
it's just like insane.
And how do you unsee that too?
Yeah, I don't know. And then somebody once described porn to me as like you're getting off on somebody else's trauma, like nobody really like doing those kinds of pornos like are
that turned on. I mean, that's why I always advise people to check out more ethical porn.
What's that?
There is porn that's made from the female gaze. Okay, so think about it. So most porn that we see is made by the male gaze.
Which is what exactly?
Which is what? It's more like aggressive.
Just from like the male
violent
POV.
Porn, male POV, like more violent porn or more about what guys would think was hot, a lot of penetration, a lot of penetration. I mean, that's not where the magic happens for the majority of women. I mean, it's which is so sad. I mean, they talk about religion. I mean, the reason why that is the kind of sex that is glorified and we've seen is because of procreation. Like for many, many eons, we were told that that's how we should only have sex and it should be for procreation. But as we already covered, that for many women, that's not where the magic happens and where the pleasure is. And so, I think that porn is, where was I going with that?
Well, male gaze, female gaze.
Oh, male gaze. Okay, got it. So the male gaze is like, let's have it penetrating. Let's have her let's do some stuff that's really painful or BDSM. Not that some women can't consensually be into BDSM and rough sex. That can be really hot too. But I just think it's like men dominating, getting like jackhammer sex or like stuff that's, again, doesn't feel good. There's no lube. There's no protection in porn. So it's from the male gaze. It's not often, there's no, okay. So this is kind of, and I'm saying not that men don't like foreplay and a plot, but when you see more ethical porn, and there's a lot of sites, I have a QR code in my book. There's actually a resource guide at sexwithemily.com. It's called the Smart Sex Resource Guide. And I list all the places to go for ethical porn. And some of them are like, it's just porn made by women for women. Like you kind of find out how they met each other. Like maybe he was her ski instructor and they had a whole day of skiing and it was really, really hot. And he kind of seduced her and they were making eyes on the chairlift. And, and then when he sees her, he just undresses her and he like goes down on her and he's like, wants her to come first. Or maybe there's a lot of women on women and there's a lot of sex toys and a lot of lube. And there's just, I don't know. There's just a little bit more. There's realistic body types. There's not just one body type. And there's pubic hair, no pubic hair. You could literally find people like you, like your body, having sex in the way that maybe you want to have or you fantasized about. And you can find it in this kind of porn.
Ethical porn just sounds like porn for women.
I know. And it doesn't sound hot either, ethical porn. Like I wish I could rename it. You're like ethical porn. And it kind of was like a buzzkill in that.
It's a little woke.
But it's hot porn. It's a little too woke. Like I don't want my porn to be ethical.
I don't want my porn to be woke. Yeah.
Like woke porn. But woke porn is better than porn that makes you feel bad.
That's true.
This porn does make you feel good. And I love the trend towards more woke porn. That's actually a better name for it. But
woke porn.
Woke porn, yeah.
Yeah. So porn is not inherently bad. It's, I guess, just kind of like what you what you do with it.
You know, it's like nutrition. It's inherently like, I guess, eating processed foods every once in a while or having some chocolate or cake is not inherently bad if you have like one piece of cake,
Yeah,
one thing. But
totally.
having the entire piece or the entire cake all the time, every day is bad. So watching porn, even if every time you masturbate porn, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's like anything, it becomes a problem when you are watching so much porn that you actually can't get off without porn. You're not even turned on when there's a human in front of you. You need to have porn on in the background every time you have sex. And that's when it becomes like a problem.
Yeah.
Your relationship to it can become a problem. But porn's not going anywhere.
I think that I have a relatively good relationship with it in that I don't really watch it, anymore. But I'm a child of the internet, so like I grew up with it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I grew up with like.
But why don't you watch it anymore?
Why don't I watch it? I just don't. I don't know.
So when you masturbate, you just sort of use your imagination.
I'm not very good at that, actually.
Masturbating or using your imagination?
Using my imagination. Yeah.
You can think about things that you have done before. That is imagination. Pictures. Maybe you want ethical porn, Max.
I don't know. There have been phases in my life where I was like masturbating more.
Yeah.
But
I think we all go in phases too.
yeah.
We go in phases where we masturbate, we don't masturbate. But it is part of being sexually healthy and well. Like it's not something to be shameful about. In fact, the more in sex begets sex. So sometimes we're not having as much sex and we wonder why. But the more sex we have, even with it ourselves, we're circulating our sexual energy and we might find that we are more in the mood, more we do it. Kind of just like exercise, right? The more you exercise, the more your body craves exercise. But when you don't exercise for a while, it's really hard to get your shoes on and get to the gym. You're like, oh God, I got to get there. And then you get there and then you're like, okay, I'm glad. It feels really good. Sex is like that too. And I think we forget sometimes, especially people in relationships, forget after a while that they liked it. Not everybody, but it becomes more of a chore because they just let it go. They don't want to talk about it. It's not exciting anymore. They don't have the novelty and the newness and the spontaneity, which is what we crave, so that it becomes more of a chore. But the more you can kind of keep sex top of mind, and I also talk about this a lot in the book too, that it's not just penetration. I give people like a million different ways, not a million, but probably hundreds of different ways. Like sex is a wide, like an umbrella term.
Yeah.
And it's not just penetration. It could be like, you know what's a really hot thing to do
Tell
with
me.
a partner? Mutual masturbation. Where
Interesting.
you're literally both lying there and you're both it's a sure thing. You know you're both going to get off. But it's also like, it's hot to watch your partner please himself. You're like, I didn't, and it's educational. She's like, I didn't know that you took your hand and you move it over the shaft when you're doing that. Like, I'm going to know that next time I touch you. Or,
whoa, interesting.
yeah. And it's also like, sometimes we just don't, it's less of a hassle maybe if you're like, oh God, sex is the whole thing. I got to be on, I got to do stuff. Giving each other massages could also be a great way to like, maybe it'll lead to sex, but it's also just intimacy and touch, which I think a lot of us crave. I just think that sex has been like ill-defined and confusing. So
That's a bummer.
I know. It needs to rebrand it.
It is
trying to rebrand sex altogether.
Well, I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not often like wanting for it. I feel like I'm pretty lucky in that I'm not like wanting for sexual opportunities. Like they present themselves.
I do. I know there's like a line of women out the door. I got here. I was like, dude, no. I know you're not. I know. I mean, I feel that.
Yeah.
But it's more like, what about, is it good sex? I mean, connected sex. Do you talk about this?
I can't complain. Yeah, we could. I think what LA makes difficult is like finding like connection. Mm-hmm. And I have commitment issues. Like we've talked about this. Like I have like.
I do too.
Yeah, I have commitment issues. So, but I try to be like as ethical in my dalliances as I can and transparent and vulnerable and honest. I think like that's where I'm different now than I was, even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more like honest and open and truthful about like my struggles, like in relationships. And I've talked about that before on the podcast in the past.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Part of it is being really honest. I mean, I love that you're transparent with people that you go out with. You're like, okay, maybe I'm not looking for anything right now, or this is just sexual. I think it's a big part of it, I think, is knowing yourself. That's just, there's a knowing to dating and sexuality that I think we haven't given ourselves permission to really explore. But I want you to move through some of the commitment stuff, Max.
We've been in therapy together. Should we talk about the fact that we have the same therapist?
Yeah. Oh my God.
We love her.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
What do you think about casual sex?
I love casual sex. I want to rebrand and casual sex as well and just say it's not for everybody, first off. Again, if you wake up and every time you have casual sex, you have the shame over, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I feel bad about myself, then don't have it. But I think that casual sex, if you go deep into your, like these sexual pillars and you understand like who you are and what you want, that you can make casual sex work for you and be really hot if you communicate about your needs. You are saying this is casual, but then you're not. I think some people think that if it's casual, they have to just hope for the best. But casual sex can be a great time to practice sexually, like practice doing something different, practice asking for what you want, practice trying out a fantasy that you thought you could never do before. But here's somebody who hopefully in casual sex you feel safe with and somebody that you trust, even if it's casual, hopefully you're making good decisions. So yeah, I think I'm a fan of casual sex.
Do you feel like it works for women as well as it seems to work for men?
Not always, honestly. And I would challenge it doesn't work as well. I think it works well for men up to a point. But yeah, to go back, I think that for a lot of, here's why I think it doesn't work for women. Well, first let me say why it does. So I think in recent years, and this has changed in these decades, is that I do think that women are becoming more empowered to say, I don't want anything serious either. I don't think I'm going to be called a slut because of that. I don't think I'm going to be seen as easy because I'm sleeping with a few people. I think that has changed. I think we're like equal rights. Like, because, back in the day, you'd be like, well, he's a stud and he's sleeping with all these people. And I'm like, what a stud. And she's a slut.
Right.
I think that has changed. The pendulum has swung a little bit. It's a little bit more fair and equitable. However, what I think where casual sex is challenging, perhaps more so for women, is that it, since we've talked about this, like your penis is external on the outside. To be rubbed, to be turned on, to have an orgasm, it's just easier for you. And for women to have more pleasure is a little bit more complicated. Like if you put 100 women in a room and they were all orgasming or they were all masturbating, they would all be doing something a little bit different. So it's like the vagina is like the Rubik's Cube of life. It's very different and tricky. So if you're with someone casually, the investment it might take to advocate for your pleasure might be a little bit more challenging.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There is kind of like a biological double standard.
Yeah.
We're just we're not built the same.
No. We're really not built the same. We're not built the same. We're not socialized in the same way. But I think that also casual sex can be something that you go in and out of in your lifetime. You're like, right now I'm in a casual sex phase, but I don't know. You tell me, don't you get to a point where you're having casual sex and then you're like, okay, but I think I want a commitment right now. And then you want to go back into, a light commitment. No, that was next. It's fun. Yeah. No. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but for many people, I think we go in and out of it, or we find that we want more. I don't know.
No, I do want connection. Like that's like definitely what I want. I just and I
what does that look like?
Well, and the thing is that, and I do have connection. Like any girl I've ever gone on a date with, like I maintain connection with them.
Yeah.
And I appreciate them, and they're always like they're stellar women. I just like this is what I've learned in therapy is like it's hard for me to like attach. Like that, the emotional side of things.
That's
like,
really
like I find physical connection and I really love and appreciate that. And I think it's mutual, like with the people that I'm with, but yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just, I saw a really funny meme the other day. Oh my God, it was so funny. There was a girl, she was like, it was like a tweet and it was like, I'm going to treat this guy how I'm going to treat this guy how men treat women. I'm just going to feed him, sleep with him, and then send him home in an Uber and see if that's what men want. And then the comments below it were like, that is what men want.
Some men want that. Yeah. They might want that for a while.
Yeah.
For temporarily or maybe for life. But then I would think that some of those men and women, it can feel harder to have connection and intimacy and maybe some depth in that. Like we can have experiences that are like really hot. And I think
when I always ask people, when I go around and I ask people like, what's the hottest sex you've ever had? What's the most memorable time you've had sex? A lot of times, what's the most memorable sex? Most people will point to something that was like spontaneous. I didn't know it was going to happen. I met this guy on vacation and it was, really hot, or it was just unexpected. It was new and exciting and thrilling. And that's why it's memorable. But I don't know if it's always the most like, what I love about like sex that can go a little bit deeper or a little bit more connected is that you can really be yourself and be vulnerable, but then you get to learn each other's bodies. You can learn to like breathe together, like breathing through sex together and grounding, and like tantric sex is really, really hot. Now you could have a casual tantric sex partner. I've been on a sex retreat before where I had like a casual, because tantric sex to me is like the most like, is really like, there's like a lot of depth to it.
Interesting.
Sexual energy, and you're connecting your
Sounds
eyes
like a big
and your
like
breath.
investment.
I know, but it's not. Like Sting was the one who brought up tantric sex, and people think you need to have sex for 12 hours and like a 62-hour like orgasm or whatever. It's something crazy, but really what tantric means is mindful. It's a connection and breath and grounding, and it can help calm the mind, because a lot of the challenges that people have through sex is that they're in their heads the whole time and they're disassociating. So, but anyway, I think casual sex, I want people to feel empowered to do it however they want, not to feel shame around it, but to also, I don't know, maybe you could have a few casual sex partners. I guess it all sort of goes.
You know what I kind of want to normalize?
Talk to me.
I've talked about this. I don't remember if I've talked about this on my podcast, but I've definitely talked about it on other people's podcasts. The way that the way that date night currently happens is you go to dinner, and then if you're at that stage in the relationship, you retreat to one or the other person's home, and then you have sex.
Yeah.
I think it should be the inverse. I think sex before dinner is ideal, because after dinner, as a guy, you only have so much blood, right? After dinner, your blood's in your stomach, you're digesting. Who knows how the food affected you, like from a digestion standpoint, that's a big wild card, right? And then you're supposed to like perform optimally.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's,
I know.
when we're talking about like optimal.
Optimally, I think that I actually named a podcast this once. It was Winner, Sex Before Dinner.
I love that.
I should have put that in the book.
Yeah.
I'm with you, because also maybe you had a few cocktails, it's late, you're tired. Sex doesn't happen. So also the other thing that I talk a lot about is finding the times of day that you want sex the most. How do you optimize? It's like working out. You can be like, okay, I know that I'm better in the morning, or I'm better evening workout, or the weekends. But sex is the same thing, and people don't often think about that. They like leave it up to happenstance. Like, I hope I'm in the mood. Or they always try to have sex at night with a partner, and then they're like, oh, it never happens. But you have to troubleshoot. I mean, there have been studies that have shown that for women, our ideal time to have sex is like mid-afternoon.
Interesting.
Which isn't ideal for people who work a 9-to-5 job, or, but on the weekends, that's great. Maybe Saturdays at 3:00, way before dinner, you get the sex, you meet up with somebody, or you do an afternoon date, and that's the time that you feel the most sexual. Maybe for some people, it's in the mornings after a workout, because you're having all that stimulation and blood flow and adrenaline and dopamine and all those things. So you're already like in an arousal state. And so I think that rather than guessing and trying to figure it all out, to actually go deep into like these pillars and understand, I know myself enough to know the best time to have sex, the best time to have sex conversations, when my body's more aroused and when it's not. Especially if you're a woman, different times a month. Like your menstrual cycle will dictate not only the foods you should eat, how you should work out, but also what kind of sex you're going to be having. And all of that can be like decoded and is available to you. So it's no longer where you're just sort of fingers crossed, hope I'm into it right now.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Why is mid-afternoon the best time to have sex for women?
I think it has to do with our hormones. I don't actually remember. I mean, to be honest, I don't know exactly why the studies said this is true for women, and maybe it's because I always think everything has to do with hormones, which is still very mysterious. Well, I think there's a lot of great people talking about hormones these days, but I think it's something that we're not really in touch with. But maybe it's, I don't know, time of day. We've already taken care of certain things in our life. We are, I don't know, Max. It's good.
No,
Max,
yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. It's a great question, though.
There's probably like a circadian
Rhythm, because men also, isn't it men is 24 cycle, your rhythms of your, like all this is the other problem I have with the whole, like with intermittent fasting and hacking and diets and all that. It's all based on men. But women's cycles are more of like a 28-day cycle that has to do with our menstrual cycle. And so there's different exercises, different foods, different times of day, where for us, it's not a 24-hour cycle that we are regenerating. It's more based on different, our menstrual cycles are going to dictate more than our 24-hour cycle. And this is where I think men and women are really different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any day of the month, we're ready to go.
Yeah,
But
no problems. But here's the other thing with women. Like we literally, for many, the week before our period, sex feels different. For some women, they're super turned on. They can't wait to have sex. They're wetter. They're more aroused. For some women, it's like painful. They don't want sex at all. But it changes. It changes during your period too. It changes when you're ovulating. And so the fact that women have gotten so removed from understanding their cycles, and there's a lot of great apps out there and a lot of great ways that women can sort of learn to track their cycle, so they actually understand. But then if you're on the birth control pill, it's actually mimicking your period. You're not actually ovulating. So it's tricky. But if you start to track it, you can kind of understand that it's not so mysterious, but you might be more, a lot for many women, they're really turned on before their period. So that's the time when they want to be like, that's when I want to do date night, or that's when I want to try these certain positions. Then there's like, during your period though, you're like, no, I do not want sex that time at all. And I would really encourage women to start to note that and take a look at it, so you can not only know that about yourself, but be able to explain that to a partner. Because I think we just feel like bad that we're rejecting them or we don't want it. But it's like, oh no, but in 3 days from now, I'm going to be like, great. I'll be having more orgasms. I'll be more aroused. I'll be more lubricated.
Are you a fan of birth control or not?
I'm really not.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of birth control pill. I think that what we have found out about it, and you had Jolene Brighton on the show too, right?
She's great, yeah.
She's amazing. And her new book is great. Everyone should check out her book. Her first book was Beyond the Pill. And it was like, she was speaking to so many things that we kind of have known, that the pill was supposed to be this innocuous pill that women would take. And I know that I took it starting at 18, and you realize that it really does mess with your cycles. And there's a lot of ways that we never sort of get back to how we should be flowing with our hormones. And so it kind of disrupts your hormones and your natural cycles. And I think that it is something to be examined a lot more closely before you just decide to go on the pill. It's not a benign thing that you put in your body all day. It can wreak havoc. They've shown that women who take the birth control pill are more likely to develop depression, other anxiety disorders, mood disorders, personality disorders, eating disorders, hair loss, PCOS. A lot of things that they haven't wanted to look at. And because it's a pharmaceutical company and birth control pill, like there's just ways that people will come for you if you talk about it in this way. But I want to just tell people to take a look at it and just kind of examine, it might be having more of an impact on your sex drive. For women who take the pill, they're less likely, for many, they have more pain. They're less likely to orgasm. They're less likely to feel aroused and turned on. You know, there's been a study, and I talk about this in the book too, that they looked at women who were on the birth control pill when they chose their partner. Because when you choose your partner, you might choose a different mate than if you're off the pill. And then they go off the pill to get pregnant or for whatever reason, and they find that there is less attraction to their partner.
Damn.
That's how much hormones impact us. And so it's just information. Make your own decision. Some people are like, I'm on the pill and I feel great. Wonderful. But for others, just know what you're putting in your body and pay attention.
Is there ever like a medically indicated like necessity for taking the pill? Like regulating menstruation? I don't know.
Most of it is bogus. A lot of women go on the pill to treat a symptom. Like, oh, I have bad skin. I mean, I have a lot of friends too in their 40s, 50s. They're like, oh, I went back on the pill, not because I want to get, not trying to get pregnant, but because it helps with my skin, it helps with my hair. But because they are like losing their hair or they're having breakouts but the truth is that's just treating like a symptom. And it's really, what's important is to get into the underlying factors that are causing these problems. And so I'm going to go out there are many doctors, gynecologists who might disagree with me, but I'm going to say that in most cases, there are a lot of other things that you could do rather than taking the pill to treat any of these symptoms.
Fascinating. I know, one reason why the menstrual cycle could be dysregulated is from not eating enough, like not
Absolutely.
having enough body fat. And we live in a time where there's immense body pressure on women. And, I encounter women all the time who will text me or, DM me or whatever, that they're on these extremely low calorie diets, right?
And they stop menstruating.
They stop menstruating.
Yeah. And it's really hard to here's the other thing. Once you start to mess with your cycle that way, it's really hard. It can be hard to get your hormones back to an optimal level. Luckily, we have more information now about the foods you can eat and exercises and things that you supplements, where I think supplements are helpful and things that you can do to kind of get them back to an optimal state, like times of day that you eat and avoiding caffeine. Unfortunately, like that's just what the studies have shown. I know it's a bummer, but yeah, and that happened to me too. And I wish I didn't. I used to be a marathon runner in my 20s, and I wasn't getting my period as much, and I didn't know why. Like no one really said. They literally, you go to the doctor, they're like, "Are you on any medications?" And I wouldn't even say the pill because I didn't really think it did anything. There was just not information at all. So it's a bummer, Max. But now we're talking about it and we're learning.
Yeah, I feel like we're no longer in the dark ages. We've got like podcasts, like platforms for people to have long form conversations. And you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, you've got your own show, which is super popular.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Are you still doing it with that satellite?
No, I'm not anymore.
Amazing.
I'm not in Sirius XM, but you've been on my show. Check out my Max Lugavere episode.
Yeah.
It's time for another one.
Yeah,
Yeah, Sex
for sure.
with Emily I've been doing for, like I said, 18 years, which is kind of unbelievable. Which is a long time to be talking about sex. But yeah, I answer people's questions. They email, they call in. I have guests. And I love doing the show still. And what I've also found in all these years which is why I literally had to write this book, because I was like, every single day, there's somebody who doesn't feel good in their body, who's never had an orgasm, who's been faking orgasms, someone who doesn't like their penis, doesn't know how to please their partner, and they have a lot of anguish and a lot of pain around it. So in many ways, the questions are the same, even though it's been so long and there's a lot of information out there. So I tried to keep trying to mix it up and provide people new ways to play, to understand it all.
After all this time, are there any questions that you're just like tired of answering?
I don't know. I just want people to, honestly, again, going back to the book, I wrote this so people could answer their own questions. I think there were some things I was like, okay, you can't have an orgasm. You're not aroused. You're shamed about your fantasy. You're shameful about asking for what you want. You've been whatever. And you want to know what sex toy to buy. It's like, I guess after all this time, I want to just empower people to, answer it themselves. So it's not that I'm tired of it. I just, I'm ready for people just to do the work. I mean, here's the other thing. There's not a quick fix. So a lot of people call me for a quick fix, a quick answer, and I can still do that. And I like helping people, but it's complex. It's emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical, mental. There's a lot of things that you have to pay attention to have the sex that you want. And I need people to start, doing the work. So I'll still answer your question, but let's get some more information and start to help yourself.
Do you know if are we having sex today? Like, are we having less sex?
We're having less sex. This is like a headline because I get my Google alerts when sex is in the news. And I read all this stuff and all the studies, and I'd say every few months there's a friggin' like, oh, we're having less sex, especially like high school, Gen Z. Apparently they're not having sex at all.
Why do you think that
They're
is?
not getting their driver's license till later. They're not leaving home. They're not having sex.
It's just because they're all on TikTok? Like that's where they're spending their time?
Literally on TikTok. I think that they were also maybe raised by parents who were a lot more involved in their upbringing, and there's a lot more fear in this generation. They're finding, like in Gen Z, that there's just more fear based around it. There's a less connection. There's less seeing, just talking and communicating with people. I think they're on TikTok, they're on their phones. They're not they're not taking classes or doing community building. If they're sitting in school or they're waiting for a bus or they're waiting for their food, they're on their phones. But you remember, right? A time kind of before when you would be waiting in line and unless you had a book in your hand, you would probably talk to the person next to you. You'd strike up a conversation. You'd walk into a party and you'd feel more comfortable, but now we just retreat to our phones. And I think that connection and attraction and learning to
even feeling sexy and feeling sensual is a skill set. Dating, sex, sensuality, attraction, hitting on someone, asking them out is all a skill set. And I think that we are no longer learning those skills. And so, yeah, I think we're having less sex.
That's scary.
It is really, really scary. I think that it makes me sad too, because I think that the loneliness epidemic, we've been talking about this for a while now, a few years, but I think that the pandemic just kind of kickstarted it, and some people have never leave their house or working from home. And I think what we're really missing is they call them like weak ties. If you read all these, like your weak ties, which sound kind of lame because there's actually weak ties are actually important, but it's the people you see at the coffee shop, the dog park, the people you saw when you were going up the elevator to work every day, those weak ties give us those boosts, those serotonin, the dopamine rush, the connection of feeling alive and feeling great. And if everything is being sent to our door, our foods, our everything, like we're not running the store anymore, like Amazon's dropping everything off, we have fewer connections with people throughout the day. And that's impacting our mental health, our spiritual health, our psychological health. And I don't know, people having more social anxiety than ever. I never had it before. Like you see, my favorite thing in the world was walking to a room where I didn't know anybody. I love a party. I love going. And even after these last few years, you used to come to my office. I had a team. I had people around me. It was really exciting. And now it's like, I'm flipping on the Zoom and I'm doing it and it's harder to leave the house right now. It's harder. We don't have to leave the house as much. But I think that we are forgetting how important those connections are to making us feel good and in our bodies and even feeling sexual, feeling attraction. How can we tell from a phone if we're swiping on dates? Nothing wrong with dating online, because I think that that's app dating is fucking great. If you want to meet somebody, you should be on social media, on the apps. But it's not the only way, because there are more single people than ever. And when you're going to Starbucks or going to a store, like there's people in there that could be your match. So just take your eyes off your phone and say hello.
100%. It's so hard though, because like what you get on social media is such a curated, processed version of what real life is supposed to be, right?
I know.
Like on dating apps, it's impossible to know what people really look like. On Instagram, it's even harder.
Could you do do you ever do like a FaceTime date? People don't do that. I want them to do it.
Terrified of that.
Why?
It's like my worst nightmare.
But wouldn't it save you so much time from going out and meeting someone, being like, you look nothing like your photo?
I don't like phone calls in general. To like have a phone call with a total stranger.
I won't call you. Yeah, that's true. True, but it saves you time. I don't know. I would love the idea of like speed dating coming back, but it's like speed video dating. And I think some apps were doing this for a while. Definitely during the pandemic they were. But they were like, you get 5 minutes. It was like chat roulette, but dating. Like it's like you 10 minutes, and you kind of see, was there attraction, was there chemistry? But yeah, you don't know now. So you gotta. I love the idea of doing a party we each invite our hot single friends.
That's a good idea. Let's do it.
Should we do that? Okay, good.
I'm down. I recently had like a FaceTime date, and it annoyed the hell out of me.
What?
Because I feel like it's easy for me personally, like it's easy to like get a sense of who I am.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty out there. Not out there in the sense that I'm strange, but yeah, I'm like out in the world, like, on social media. You can like watch me on YouTube or whatever. There's a bajillion places to go and like get a sense of what I'm like.
Yeah.
So I just felt like it was a little bit, but, and it didn't ultimately like pan
go
out
anywhere. Yeah. What do you do after that? You're like, okay, talk to you never.
Yeah.
This is ending.
Yeah. But I get it. I get like that. I can see the utility in that for sure. It's all because you're right. It is a massive waste of time and energy, like meeting up with a stranger from the internet.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
in person.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think we need more gatherings. There's just people who are single in your area. How hard is that? You could all like meet in a park, have like a potluck singles. Everyone brings fucking water. I don't care. You go for there's all these places that you could just meet people, and you're all there for that purpose of like when speed dating was a thing. I don't know. I have this whole kick right now that just make it so much easier, because how we used to meet people was through friends of friends at a party, at a wherever, at a party or at work or someone's birthday party, your friend's birthday party.
But now, again, we're not doing as much, or
Yeah.
we're not putting ourselves out there.
There's
so.
fewer. Yeah, I have a friend who like works the door at some nightclubs in LA, and he was telling me that one thing that hasn't recovered at all post pandemic was the Monday through Thursday nightlife scene
Really?
in LA. Like people will still now go out on weekends. Like that has come
Okay.
back. But there used to be this nightlife scene, during the
Yeah.
week, like Monday through Thursday. People would go out Tuesday night, whatever, Thursday night. That hasn't recovered.
Really?
Yeah,
People like, I'd rather stay home and watch TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And he
to
works
note.
like top nightclubs. And he was like, I was like, really? He was like, yeah, 100%. It's like a night and day difference.
So, okay, that's few less day, like 3 or 4 fewer days that people can meet and have sex too.
There you go.
That would make sense too.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think Me Too was sort of a wake up call for many people that it's like, maybe men were like, I'm not sure that I even know how to connect in a way, or there's fear around that. I just think that a lot has changed in recent years. It all contribute to the fact that we are more fearful about sex, or just not prioritizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole the Me Too thing was like a double-edged sword, right? Because it exposed monsters like Harvey Weinstein and all those people. But then it led to this like, I feel like confusion where, people started to think that like creepy behavior was illegal or something,
Yeah.
or like, people started like kink shaming and things like that, I don't know too much about this story, but like the Army Hammer story.
Oh yeah.
Like
I know a little bit about it.
he was certainly he cheated on his, he had a wife and he had a family. So I'm not saying I'm not defending him or saying he's a good guy, but I think a lot of the press that I saw on him was like kind of kink shaming him for like his, BDSM tendencies.
Yeah,
but he
exactly.
never, and like, he would like say all these weird things that would suggest that he was like a cannibal, which he wasn't,
Right. Exactly. Right,
like he
exactly.
said some weird shit. Which I would never say. Like, I don't know anybody else who would say anything even remotely close to the kinds of weird things that he said. But like, suddenly as a culture, we decided it's okay to like kink shame somebody who hasn't directly caused harm to
This
anybody
is the
else.
problem with it, because there's so much misunderstanding about what kink is.
Yeah.
And so we love to like get any morsel we can about someone's sex life. Like you see, whenever a celebrity says anything about their sex life, it's like headline news, like so-and-so. I think there's something about like Gwyneth Paltrow. They're like, oh, she said that she had sex wherever, because we're dying for any information about it. But yet there's so much misinformation about it too. So kink is literally, and I have a whole chapter on this too, because it's so misunderstood. What kink is, people assume it's like cannibalism, or you need like a 50 Shades of Grey, red room of pain. But literally, it's anything that is, blowjobs are seen as kinky. Oral sex is seen as kinky. Kink, anything that's not kink is like basically like making out a missionary. Well, if you're doing anything other than that, you're probably a little kinky. I have like a little kink quiz in here too. People can kind of figure out how kinky they are, what they're into. How great to be able to also get to the point where, this is my vision, is that we live in a world where you are going on dates and you're meeting people and you're asking all the questions like, where did you grow up? And what's the best place you went on vacation? And what do you want to be? Or where do you want to live? Or city or the country? Or do you want kids? But you're also talking about like, what are you into sexually? Like what turns you on? Like, why is that something that you have to figure out when you feel comfortable talking about sex? And maybe it's months or even years into the relationship, and then you find out you are completely incompatible. You have a higher sex drive than they do. Your partner doesn't feel comfortable talking about it. So I beg people to get a growth mind, to have a growth mindset around sex, but then to find a partner who also has a growth mindset around sex, and find that out before you walk down the aisle, fall in love with them, do all the things. And, that's just my mission. Can we like normalize the conversations about sex already? Please, save us a lot of pain.
Love it. Well, you are definitely helping to push that conversation forward. So thank you. Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
Well, so once upon a time, there was this guy named Freud, and he was literally the worst thing to happen to sexual health for women, because he had said the clitoral orgasm, that's infantile. You should be wanting to achieve the vaginal orgasm, which is, again, a very male-centered approach. Like,